I think most people here, many people here know, and it's been talked about in several other talks, stages of development of cultural worldviews, worldview structures of consciousness. So I'm just going to take a quick look at what I could think of, what we could think of as stages of development of the field of consciousness studies. So first you have the archaic stage, really sort of pre-awareness. It's basically, of course, I'm conscious, get out of my way. I have to get on with the important things of life, the 3 F's and that kind of thing. Then you have magical stage, enthrallment with the extraordinary, enchanted, magical denizens of the phenom of consciousness. And I'm not dismissing it this stage by going on, and I'm going to get back to it a little bit later. Then you have the mythic stage. So mythic theories of consciousness are, I gotta move this thing here, are informed by metaphysical or quasi-religious sources, basically scripture or whatever my guru told me, or conventional wisdom, or notions of what is a scientific worldview informing your theory of consciousness on this stage-like development idea. And theories of consciousness at this stage separate into camps. You know, the dualist camp, the materialist monist camp, idealist monist camp, and the camps battle irreconcilably because camp membership is based on belief or faith in an authority or scripture. That's the label of this stage, the mythic stage. And belief or faith in an authority or scripture. And so mythic membership, right and wrong, bad guys and good guys. That's why the camps can't ever reconcile. So then we have the rational stage, where theories of consciousness are developed according to principles of formal operational reason and investigated with the scientific method. Theories of consciousness are developed according to principles of formal operational reason and investigated with scientific method. And the Tucson Science Towards the Science of Consciousness conference created in 1994. However, it was largely dominated by materialist monists, science, though it was ostensibly, calling itself science of consciousness, trying to transcend themselves. And, but it was largely still dominated by a camp of materialist monists that have mantras like dualism is impossible because it would violate the physics law of conservation of energy. The physical universe is causally closed. Everyone knows that. These kind of mantras, those actually, though, are mythic stage mantras because they're kind of arrested development of the rational stage based in 19th century physics thinking, applying it erroneously, really. And at 1998, there was a conference titled Towards the Science of Acupuncture at UC Irvine. I think they might have borrowed the kind of name structure from Towards the Science of Consciousness. And that was, I thought it was gonna be an exciting conference, weekend conference, a one-time conference, because that was based on some results that found functional MRIs in the brain, areas lighting up associated with acupuncture point stimulation, like on the foot, associated with the visual cortex and with vision and traditional Chinese medicine, visual cortex in the brain. So the National Institutes of Health and the National Academy of Sciences funded this conference Towards the Science of Acupuncture. And at that conference, there were 2 consensuses. Consensus 1, that acupuncture works in some cases for some things. Consensus 2, that there are no physical anatomical correlates of acupoints. So I was at the conference and I thought, oh, this is great. This scientific heavyweights, National Academy of Sciences are going to start funding research based on these 2 understandings that maybe acupuncture does work according to a subtle body, a non-physical subtle body like the traditional Chinese medicine says. But at the end of the conference, the National Institutes of Health representative got up. He said, okay, we're only going to fund research that will prove that acupuncture works via the physical peripheral nervous system. So it kind of deflated my bubble there. And I see that as a kind of attempt at rational stage and descent back into the mythic. And in 2015, the Tucson Science Towards the Science of Consciousness changed its name to The Science of Consciousness. And I think the materialist monist camp sort of thought it had won with the name change, The Science of Consciousness. And okay, that's the end of development. We can all go home now, right? Well, no, not at all. That's not at all the whole story. And running through this is the role of quantum physics in this. For example, especially the founder of the Tucson conferences with David Chalmers, Stuart Hameroff and Penrose's orchestrated objective reduction theory, which depends on quantum physical functioning as it's part of how it works. This role of quantum physics tracks this development through these stages, I think. And there were attempts to prove that quantum effects can have no role at all in consciousness because of quantum environmental decoherence effects. The brain is too wet and warm. But it took years, but they're finally published in Physical Review Journal, refutations of that. And even recently, Roger Penrose has said that idea is just wrong. So then we're on to integral stage of consciousness studies, wherein you can say theories of consciousness incorporate all the previous stages, multiple perspectives, all perspectives, privileges no single perspective, while integrating all perspectives into a new whole. Recognizes there's actually a radical transformation going on, evolving now in our basic scientific understanding of what consciousness is, and therefore what reality is. And this theories at this stage need to be validated by, tend to be validated by direct experience, not appeal to authority, and not only a particular type of empirical scientific method. This stage differentiates itself from the rational stage is functioning transrationally, that is fully rational, but also something more. And the realities of quantum physics reinforce this kind of ontology that is not fully explainable at the rational stage, not rationally explainable. Something is going on here. And so I suggest this is where the Society for Consciousness Studies is operating. It was founded by Alan Leslie Combs and Stanley Krippner, who is here today, and Mons Baruch and several others. As Alan said, as a reaction to being booted out of the CSC and other conferences. So at this stage also, you can have a revival of parapsychology, for example, and this is a transrational reintegration with the magical stage. And now that's quite interesting, right? So it's a fully rational, but then reintegrates with all the amazing things going on at the magical stage. The hitch is that those stuck only at the rational stage, they can only see pre-rational and rational. So that's why they booted Leslie Combs and the others out of their conferences, because I'm glad you're laughing, Ellen. And so I see the presenters today as in this mode, and at this stage there's a meta-integration of the camps, the mythic camps, and approaches like dual aspect neutral monism, which can kind of contain all of those camps. It's a kind of neo-Whiteheadian approach. And there's a compassion, kind of compassion for the lower stages because they're suffering. You know, all the other lower stage, all the rational, pre-rational stages, they can't stand each other. They fight each other. But this stage tends to have a compassion and an understanding for all of the stages. And there's something interesting that happened, by the way, with the founders, the two founders of the Tucson Science of Consciousness conferences. David Chalmers, as has been mentioned already today, has started to endorse dualism. Stuart Hameroff, who's also a member of this society, recently commented on the society website that his Or theory supports the possibility of extrasensory perception, basic parapsychology, near-death experiences, and that sort of thing. So I suggest that those founders of the Tucson Conference are now operating at integral level, although I attended the recent one, and I love those conferences, but I thought the recent one still operating, other than the founders, largely rational stage still. And Hiroshi Motoyama's founding of the California Institute of Human Science, I see as operating here. And a little bit, I will talk a little bit about the meta-ontology A-theory project that I've been working on and presenting at these Tucson conferences, actually the last 3 conferences. I see this as trying to sort of complete the rational stage as a foundation for bringing in the integral stage. And there's a YouTube video here of my 2018 talk on this at Tucson conference. And in this talk and in my recent talk at Tucson, I apply Hiroshi Motoyama's Being in the Logic of Interactive Function book and work in this on this title as an example, plug-in for the transphysical aspect of this kind of meta-ontological theory. Just a little quick history of the Tucson. Yeah, like I said, Tucson conferences back in 2000, quantum effects were believed not likely in the brain. That was kind of the general understanding and general consensus at that time. Essentially, classical physicalist models of consciousness were believed to be deemed the only seriously scientific approach because quantum effects were believed not possible. And causal closure of the physical was generally accepted. But now things have changed. Quantum effects of many types are now accepted to happen all over biology, including in the brain. There's magnetic field sensors in birds that operate quantum mechanically with quantum entanglement, photosynthesis, many other biological effects are very well accepted right now. Biological quantum effects. And the idea that quantum physics necessarily has something to do with consciousness comes out of just a direct understanding of the foundations of quantum physics. And the idea that if conscious physical agency does happen, it probably involves quantum non-closure of the physical in some way. These are all, I think now, fairly broadly held beliefs, and now everybody's a panpsychist. Almost everybody. It's sort of the emerging view is leaning towards panpsychism, it seems to me. And the idea of causal closure of the physical is an outdated notion, but that's not very well accepted, I saw at the conference. So the physicalist claim of causal closure of the physical is that interactionist dualist theories of consciousness are impossible because they violate the law of conservation of energy. The physical universe must be causally closed. Therefore, consciousness cannot have causal agency, but that's false. Why is it false? Well, it's just basic quantum mechanics, because there's this non-algorithmic process of the collapse of the wave function that gives an opening for the possibility of something not physical causing what happens there. I'm running out of time, so I'm going to skip over the development of this and just point out that the other development of that builds up the physical side, physics side of the ontology that has an opening for the metaphysics working with it for the conscious agency. And I think a good candidate for that, or at least an example, is this book by Motoyama, Being in the Logic of Interactive Function. Stanley Krippner earlier today mentioned that some of Motoyama's other books are kind of difficult and there's, a second language problem. This book came out relatively recently in 2009, and it had 2 translators and is pretty well written. So if you want to look at a Motoyama book, especially in this regard, I recommend this one. So I'll leave the details of that for later, and except to note that in that book he bases his ontology of developmental stages of consciousness on direct experience, on his direct experience. So that's part of the integral approach, the trans-rational approach. He doesn't just pull together the ancient scriptures and make a theory. He bases it on his direct experience, and it's because of his direct experience is why he worked on developing devices that attempt to validate the existence of the subtle bodies that coexist with the physical body, because he had direct experience of them and actually used subtle body functioning in his work as a Shinto priest. And so he wanted to apply whatever scientific methods to validate that these subtle bodies exist and investigate how they work and demonstrate how they work. And it is, however, basically a heart-based integral education, a heart-based approach, because operating at those levels, like I think most people here know that it's necessarily a heart-based operation, because the higher chakras are awakened, including the heart chakra. And so the approach, Motoyama's approach though, and CIHS's approach is just because it's heart-based doesn't mean you can't also do science. It's not an either or. That's a key part of it. So now I'll say a little bit about CIHS, California Institute for Human Science. These bullets about CIHS, about consciousness-based integral education at CIHS are from our Dean of Integral Education, Sean Hagens, who I think is here, or he was at this conference earlier today. And this is what CIHS is doing and planning to do. Draws on and is relevant to multiple traditions of integral education, including Aurobindo's, Wilbur's, while based also on Motoyama's vision. And we view integral education as the best elements of traditional, holistic, and innovative educational traditions and approaches. CIHS applies integral education philosophy to all aspects of CIHS, learning, governance. This is an ongoing process, of course, but learning, governance, student, faculty, administration, learning and development, curriculum architecture, evaluation and assessment, etc. Even accreditation. CIHS develops and promotes an integral approach to the human sciences that explore multiple dimensions of the human being through distinct set of sciences: body, health sciences, emotions, affective sciences, mind, psychological sciences, soul sciences, and spirit, contemplative sciences. Develop and promote integrative science that is a mixed methods approach to human, social, and natural sciences that use first, second, and third person methods, especially subtle energies research, like I just referenced, subtle energy sciences, and that's led by our subtle energy sciences and laboratory research director, Nandini Katre, who I saw at this meeting earlier today too. So to wrap up, I call it A theory, the meta-ontology approach. A theory for actual theory, theory of what actually happens. A theory, meta-ontology provides a integral framework for developing a whole theory of actual reality that sustains consciousness as fundamental agency. The Society for Consciousness Studies advances integral stage and pro-evolutionary consciousness studies and applications. CIHS is delighted to co-sponsor these conferences.